It is correct. The being of very interesting right now is that Mayuri might take so much pride in being like the current head of the operations department and basically handling all the data and the data organization. So like Mayuri might be take someone who takes so much pride in all that stuff. So like that reason. So like the recent integration into like Mayuri's lab and accessing of sector data and significant about like might have been willingness with that and like Mayuri's skills people might have been might have been the case. And might be the reason for like Mayuri only attempting to like intimidate and like making all that correct, assembling all those circuits and making all that correct against like those circuits. And even then, like even at that point, like I'm doing some my stuff getting like the exact circuit is that like Mayuri might really have that out of like basically as like the possibility, highest possibility of like the one that might have most likely the ones who might have done that whole integration and accessing of like the long data or even while making that threat to like all the assembled circuitry, like even at that point from a risk point of view, like we might have seen felt that it felt strongly that like it might have been either Ukitake since like yeah either Ukitake or like Tetsuya or like Yorko that might be either one among these three or like uh, all three of them like together working together and they might have been like the ones that might have in Python and like just like around that would be along the lines like Mayuri might have strong feeling even back then by making all that correct due to like Europe having asked like Mayuri for like the for accepting like the data bank and Mayuri listing in like the past as well as like things like I think that today as well as that if I can believe that like researching about like the forms and everything connected to and like so definitely like what might have happened after that Mayuri had made all that challenge someone like protect and like challenged and made that threat against like this what might have happened after that might have been that Mayuri might have then open man of might have straight away gone to like the right man and like to undo like the law for that totally feel that Mayuri is like shocking surprise like and even like the lock might have been set in such an extremely brilliant and precise man of that like and an extremely complex man of that like and that even Mayuri might have seriously struggled to like undo that law. I think that on like the latter like which was like so definitely Mayuri himself might have seriously struggled to like undo that law and that might have totally crushed like Mayuri's ego even for so like the last day Mayuri might have wanted at that point might have been for like that the Black Mayuri's threat and like challenge to like the circuit like to for like another season iteration to like Mayuri's like lab and like accessing of like the that event to like happen and for like another even more tougher and complex job to do set to like Mayuri's like that event which like not even Mayuri might be able to like undo the law that might be along the lines of that fear and if that happens then like that will be the figure that Marinator felt that fear that might would like if such scenario happens that will be like the biggest embarrassment for like my areas like that while being like the head of like the research department and if again those even points out about like such situations then like definitely my area might even get replaced by somebody else like my area might even lose like like the head of the research department if that happens there on the lines of that fear that might have happened to like Mayuri at that point. This might be the reason for like Mayuri like probably at person like basically like bringing and showing like the bound that will precisely if they are as well as like okay, like as well as like cure for right now. Certainly might be the chance. Definitely after like showing all this bound to them like I'm totally also working for like Mayuri to also secretly tell them to like to keep this a secret and to not reveal to like any other point about like Mayuri having shown them like this that found data and everything after like making all that challenges and threat and somehow when after like coming all this work and maybe along the lines like Mayuri might have secretly made a deal with that with the team of like Hitsuya Tetake as well as like your in exchange for like showing who from data right now might be like that rejected the situation especially mobile payments. So like that the person who might have set this like extremely complex law which might have been such an extremely complex law on the data bank of that my secretly might have actually been considered like a different like considered might be way more brilliant, far more brilliant than my when it comes to like handling the data bank and everything. So I'm definitely it might have been definitely there that there was that complex law which might have probably destroyed my that ego at present might be like the accuracy of the situation that might have been 100% right now. So like the new generation right now, that like what might have happened might have been maybe that Mayuri might have secretly sought like might have the Philippines bottom stated of like not being left to me like the law based on like the data and secretly might have sought like the help of like today after and it's they have been brilliant with that with like handling fathers and everything that might be one thing that Mayuri might be already aware like also related to the like Mayuri might have secretly sought the help of today and like it might have been together that might have undone like the law as well as like already set up like the law in like the workplace maybe like that's the situation settling on framework and Mayori might have totally like told it to that teachers a secret that like Mayori wasn't able to like undo the law on like the other might be along the lines like Mayori might have asked might have told it's there and at that point like it's where might have gone against of like Mayori and might have told Mayori that basically so if like Mayori wants it to like keep this a secret then like Mayuri has to like allow like not only the but like also as well as Kitake to like go through like the boundary that in like that are like if along the lines that the might have at that point like made this like fix might have been what might have happened and like at that point like Mayuri might have had like absolutely no other choice but to like agree to the Ichigo's villains might have been what might have happened to Umino Apprentice. So like Mayuri at present like declaring that like he has like undone like the law on like the data bank might be from like Mayuri's point of view thinking that basically neither Toraku as well as like Tsubake is like that like might be due to like Mayuri's probably most likely think that like Tsuga had kept the deal and has not revealed about like thinking Ichigo that had removed like the law on like the data bank to like that Hitler hasn't revealed that to that Jericho as well as that because I told you along the lines that Mayuri might be believing into like the person and hence like Mayuri might be that making all this declaration that she has let to know that when actually like Hitler might have most likely that after that making the deal with that Mayuri like Hitler might have straight away gone up to that Ukitake as well as that Ukitake as well as that Jericho and might have straight away revealed all the happenings and all the progress that end up leaving like the doc as well initially being placed on like the data bank itself might have been according to that the teamwork and planning of that particular look at that as well as that your might be like that to the limitation certainly might be very unrestricted. So like the main of the operation right now is that basically that the actual reason for like the war between that power price as well as the currency price in the system but might have been definitely due to that the soul rate of the Stephanie like so that what might have actually happened that you know the Stephanie maybe that for like the soul rate was that then and this war might have taken place in like the ancient past might be like the days Stephanie mentioned so that the situation of like the soul rate might have been extremely perceived back then of like foreign soul papers that they might have wanted that absolute control, not only over like the soul society, but also in like the human world as well. Might be that that has been the threat of like the soul because with like for a long time that the soul papers might have wanted to that but might have ceased temporarily faith solely due to like the presence of like the round price because like the actual institution that they want to that like while like the bounce might the bounce of like the bounce would be might be like that certainly advantage extremely advantages against like the soul record like the bounce of like the bounce might be like naturally extremely disadvantages against like all the materials as well. And like the princess power might be extremely advantageous naturally against like the ones that might be like trying to face the situation but remember the thing so like definitely according to my preference and programming, like the older person might have desperately want to like take like that absolute control over like the human world as well. Sometimes like I'm for like it might have been that like the might have seen like the situation of like eventually might have ended up situation where like the form might have eventually ended up starting to like consume living soul might have been like the case. And that way like the common selection from all even way back then in like system might have started like spread that way more and more followed might have entered charter to like and spread into like the human world. Might have been what might have happened. So like I'm bring like at that point I'm different like definitely since like the distance of like the human world and like the whole society it's dependent on each other and basically things like I think when you talk about that one can't exist without next other like so definitely I'm bring that the sort of might have used that whole situation to totally go to and seek the help of that frequencies to like totally take out that the bound right. And like the soldiers at that point might have cited their reasons as to like why the Quincy's should take out like the bounce rate and but citing about like the hit on like kind of the hit on by expanding and like the increase in like hollow input rate interval, which like I'm looking at that point like the Quincy's as well. Might have slowly started to like knowledge that the increase in like the hollow during that point might have been like that with the situation that live in. So like fundamental condition that the portrait of might have been so degraded and might have water that has been controlled even on top of like the human world as well. Even before all this situation happened, like and might have sort of like help of that might have sent their portrait of using like the long system cast even before this to take out like the bound tribe and might have and that's really fair that that might have had and at that point like the sort of might have even back then might have sought like the help of like the Vincis to take down like the mouse and basically back then like the Vincis tried might have only rejected that attempt of that sort of like the cleanup realization to start out for like the Vincis would like start the war with like the bounce because like at that point like the situation might not have lived in like the sort of having absolutely no reason to like back up their need as to like how as to like why they want like the bounce right the bounce might be like that so like the Vincis at that point might have found with like desire of like the social process like totally an unwanted and unnecessary and that feature that desire that the Vincis back then might have rejected like the desire that desire of that wanting like the Vincis to make war against like the wrong which like so kind of want might have been like that so like once like this like found might have started consuming that living soul continuously the kind of someone that is spending and like once like the increase in that hollow to like the human world might have started like happen like at that point I was like I'm sorry because might have hoping you that situation to the advantage to like at that point for you seek the help of like the 20 take out like the mountain while like citing that the reason like as for like why the sort of want that the business to like out like around right and like the sort of might have at that point even lied and manipulated like the users by saying that basically the sort of had like 14 such a future possibility uh, of like a situation that of like a problem getting created by that the wrong right and this was like the reason for like the sort of that the distant past like basically having sort of like the head for from like this to prevent such an to prevent such a problem in like the future was like the reason for like the sort of seeking like the help of the using like the instant past and for needed like the 20s like rejecting that not providing that health care like before right and not taking off like the bounce like the situation has like right now happened in that and basically that could like follow and create and follow them or electric world and media along the lines and like so results might have been manipulated entire thing and might have both that created that get to the next which might have certain like certain straight away agreeing to that help like so right and that might be how like the marketing like and that's about might have even happened might be like the case, might be the active difference with this, but even this might be the reason for that is the stealth force even being reduced to be like the ones recording haven't been even in that system but they have recorded like the footage of like the war between like frequencies as well as that certainly which is so like definitely that recording the footage by the stealth force might have definitely been for like whoever it was that was like the head of like the research department back then like it might have been definitely according to most likely also according to like the owner of the head captain of like the source basic who resource better. So definitely study that in detail about like the unique powers of like the Quincy that makes it possible for like the Quincy tribe alone to like succeed so much like even like the soul resource failing to like run down like about like what's so unique about like the Quincy power that makes it so easy for them to like that naturally gives like that advantages for the popular level one to be along the line to study like in the power like this camera footage uh, of this like marketing like the and like the bound right might have been followed by it might be like that to take into consideration parameters. So like that way I'm still remembering like that will be at but still by the time like the will see to this the war had been over and by the time like the Kunji had like taken off like the majority of like the bound right like even though that a few bound rights might have definitely like a few members of like that bound right might have totally managed to like survive and escape might have been okay. But like I was saying that the act of like the Quincy is taking out like the majority of the bound right might have resulted in like for the in like the tunnel once again turning back to like exercise and like that way like the increase in like inspiration of like follows it really like pretty involved like stopping at that point might have been what might happen. But like by then like already a lot of follows might have entered into that pretty involved. And so from that point on like another part might have began between like after like taking out like the bounds like the next part for like the princess might have been which like the princess might have been had like no other choice but to like right might have been against like the his army of like for uh, this might have by then might have made it to that the human world. It's definitely manipulated. So like that way that the Soviet person might have been so desperately wanting to like also really take control of that the uh, and to have that absolute authority or like the human world as well and different like by checking like the vast potential between like the disease and like the ones like they made us study a lot about the free like powers of the disease as well as like Mayuri I think that can reveal over the part of that thing in the research and the disease and after continue by being like I think that happened so definitely with like Mayuri as well completing his like research on like the like all that might have been definitely for that eventually once like that for like the so request to that ways the next one in a more prepared manner when compared to like the one they might have done in detail against like the bounds and it might have been like the war against like the Vincis to like wipe out like the Vincis so that like so many people that don't have that don't have like cultivated or in like the world so that like both bounds as well as the Vincis would be like who might have been like something like but might have been like very huge in that number would be ended up ending up into the like minority. This might have been more like for the big later on. And at that point, like the Finns tribe might have been absolutely shocked and like basically at like the sudden attack by like the huge army of like so reapers against like the Finns. But and at that point, like the Soul Reaper, what they might have been like they might have made the excuse of like basically like this war was like against like the Finns by like Soul Reaper due to like the Finns elimination of like four in like the balance between like the human voice and like the soul society once again that the balance getting disturbed and that then probably like so purpose might have made such an excuse of like a reason to hide like what might be like the protein density might have been to be like the dominant uh, only existing tribe to exist in like the human world and to have that as control of like, the human world and so the sake of like be like the middle and have like the that has to control of like the human world and for like only bound but like the physical to like enter to like the minority or like the or like the athlete wipe out like the disability. So that definitely this intent which might have always existed with the intellect the domestic soul was sort of years back then like might have been what might have been getting at that point as well. Which like they might have written this and that time might have been what might have been getting at that time. Might have been what might have happened, especially when and this might be also the reason for like it being already revealed that like once like the Soviet had started to like wipe out like agencies like this you at that point like the Soviet was not even bothering to even like to bring even any sort of like awareness to like the country right about like the confidence of like the princess that the way the princess that takes out like the whole of that causing that disturbance of like the balance between like the human world as well as like the social society like did not even like the fact that I think it was revealed that so never even attempted to even to even bring awareness to like the princess and that way to like even avoid a lot against like or like wipe out of like, the princess like the fact that the so because never even attempted such a thing more involved with like bringing awareness to like the things might lead leading to like the steering realistic entity of like an intent to then possibly affecting within that interest as well of like wanting like the soul request to have that with authority and control not only over like the soul society but also all like the human and that the human world as well. Might be that the reason and might be the case that might be the so like basically in short, like this might be productivity might be also the reason for like Jin's like dialogue to like instead of judging those like something along the lines of the black found as well as like things being unique and hence getting targeted by like so because I think that kind of the line. So definitely that the reason for like Jin even saying such along the lines of like a dialogue might have been the lead that Jin most likely having most likely lived so long and having most likely uh, witness like these wars between like the bound as well as like the Quincy's as well as like the war like the Socrates might have raised against like continuation and against like the need to that right on like the good and everything. So that definitely maybe in this war as well that Jim might have been like the minor and might have been among like the minority survivors of like that war against like the and everything. So Jim might have been like an absolute total witness to that all this happening that had taken place in the critical water with Starbucks and for like that absolutely of like the soul papers like Jim might be well actually aware of all this might be like that creative is definitely my name again exactly and that the reason behind that title of like Jim as well. Might be also the case like about the weather of okay, so that's definitely my different right now is that maybe in that the intake right even from like long distance past that might have been such that actually the whole the strongest among that in that intake right might be automatically getting selected to be that the leader of the right regardless of that individuals leadership skills whether it's good enough or not like anything that might have been that as before in the this might have been from like the Indian representative right where like it might have been like leadership and like the role of like the enterprise might have been solely based on strength alone of that thinking user might be like that individual and like that thinking individual will become like the leader might also wear like a fully face covering command as like might be the case that we and regardless of how good or bad like the role leadership role of like that Quincy is like all the remaining Quincy members in like the tribe might all look up to that Quincy leader and basically all of their strength and hope would be all that all of the Quincy members will be placing all of their strength and hopes on like that thing of Quincy leader might be like that of like how like the Quincy tribes might have been working from that all the way back to like the distant ancient past might be like the actual greatest elements and might be the reason for like and the bounds might be well and fully aware of this even from that ancient past. So like this might be the reason for like that entire of like in that place by the stealth force like also that huge number of like bound army specifically targeting that site 20 members. It might be solely due to that implement most likely being like the leader and like from like the bounce that perspective like they would be totally benefit around that like if like the period like taking out like the leader agency then like the remaining agencies will be all losing their courage and morale and their hope in like the war and that then like at that point to take out like the remaining agencies would be not that hard for like the bounce. It'd be along the lines like the bounce might be like the actuality of like the active execution that might be one thing that the bounty gun back then might be other like the possibility that I'm looking at Ishida and probably for things that Ishida and that Ishida's father and most likely might be Ishida and Ishida's grandfather as well as like Ishida's like father and that might belong to that the very same front line of like this exact Quincy leader in that place with that fully covered face that basically that it might be this like long line of like descendants might be that the person and they ended up might be that the long line of descendants might be that actual difference. So like according to my information that footage like that Quincy was like the fully covered place might be like that and forms like a Quincy later like and for like the group just like powers like back then in like that footage like that might be lately present within Ishida as like as that absolute hidden potential within Ishida and present about which that Ishida might be having like no idea at all. Might not be even aware at all. Might be like the actual difficult situations also like a possibility that in which like all that immense power and potential within like Ishida and connect Ishida finally eventually in that the very distant future that realizing about like all that power and about like the bloodline of that as well connecting to that like continuous from that with everything. All this like you should have probably finding out about it that and realizing about it that only like can be done and therefore like the very distant future like should have finally succeeding in that gaining access to all that immense power and potential like within that principal power and potential lying within like so also like you can say and that way getting that major extreme sharp spike in like power rate or happening and like I'm looking like the first of the scale of it, but like I'm looking that even like a form transformation as well, like a minor bit of like a form transformation as well happening to Ichigo at that point. Once like it will also finally be able to like act all that so powerful like Ichigo might exist with him. There's like an individual possible future, instant future scenarios that I'm developing and preparing. Okay, so like the claim of preemption right now that like Mayuri might be totally like about like the footage like and like the entire full footage of that what has been that one and eventually it happened with that lead on to like that Quincy was like fully covered face mask like about the manipulation might be like the real like what happened like the end of that one like and like that full footage might be totally present somewhere at like some different location can secretly at like some different location within Serenity itself might be like the activity of its citizen and like that might be such extremely high confidential crucial information comes into like the which could like totally expose like the true villains of that like the soul reapers might have totally committed even from like the long past and like would be exposing like the greed that like the soul reapers the villains greed and like villains actions like the soul reapers has would have done in like the long distance past might have been like the case of human friends. So like to hide that from like the hide that from like the remaining soldiers of like and like this might be according to like the orders of like the head captain of like the society that maybe like general say of like head captain before like a society of like might have even fallen and they so like maybe most likely maybe Mayuri being aware of this and like probably right now it's like the person like lying about it and even in like Mayuri like name data bank area like Mayuri only storing like cutting out and storing only that much of like footage because like the remaining of like the footage like what might have actually happened might have been that the Quincy army might have probably defeated like the uh, defeated like the Sound army in that war might be what might have happened so like that 20 member was like the fully our face mask who might be according to my illustration might be like the leader he might be so successfully from that attack. What might have happened might have been like those three 20s alone like might have eventually taken out like the entire field of like the found army. And like that way and that's why like the very few found army members like which like Jin as well, you know, like maybe might have like might have managed to escape and easily survive. Might have been what might have happened even way back then in like the cinemas happening and but like I'm thinking, at that point since like what might have also happened might have been like after recording all this like today's like I'm thinking, after recording and studying like the work footage like and when like you saw the strongest soul rate was back then maybe like around like the captain back then might have faded away so up to like the human body toward the like this 20 layer might have been and like he might have made that soul rate of that head captain and which is like he might have fully made that absolute betrayal at that point and might have taken out while like the leader might have least expected like they might have showed up and might have made that absolute betrayal of like an ambush attack on like the conciliar who might have been also exhausted after like the war to some extent. So like the soldiers might have taken advantage of the situation like take out like the conciliar back then might have been what might have happened the villain situation for like the villanistic people like the villanistic area of that might have existed back then and even to the percent of like the soldiers into the person like genders as well might be for behind that belief. So the belief like to take that absolute control or like the human world as well for like so the request to have that absolute control and into that back when like such a betrayal might have already happened and like definitely like that remaining footage like available that like the society social pocket captain like back then might have maybe like the format is strong so like along with like it's like army might have shown up and might have get that betrayal and taken out like that uh, taken out like that layer of security might have been what might have happened about this like and even to that as well I'm whispering like maybe like I'm whispering like Jin might be the weakest it's definitely or like maybe Jin's like parents might have been always a skill like even that as well and might have passed down that information to Jin might see what might have happened. Also like the motivation that I'm looking for the something. So like definitely the fact that like there's like not the continuation of like that footage might be definitely due to like the conscious like villanistic cutting out of that entire footage to hide like the villanistic things that like the filmmakers had done in like the ancient past. Might be like that critic of like this is definitely making temperate that is really about it. Okay, so like the flame I would understand right now is that like the bounce and like the ancient past might have been like a group of like peaceful individuals who might have targeted that peace and nothing else. Might be like that to consider the flame mention. This might be the reason for like right now Mayuri even revealing that like in that past like the bounce had like crucial role to like not take the source of like the living. Might be the gift like it might be due to like the ancestor bounce like even from the long distant past whenever we are aware of like the consequences of taking like life children so like would be like resulting in like a huge inflow of like horrors like entering like the human world and like that way to like for that will definitely never happen like just like a whole might have even been created within like the found community and like God right in that the like they might have been like peace love my way back then in that person of my feel like that critical institutions definitely not the brain. So definitely lack the sort of lack fundamental brain might have attempted to lack bring down like the in like the path solely out of that result because that great that made you to like the head captain back then that was great to like take that enforce that absolute about teaching and like the word by like the so because like that way, like the soul record might have been like the ones that might have initially started the war with like the foundation, like the soul record might have been lost against like the bound. And since then, like the soul record might have been studying about like the bound that that way while studying about like the bounds, they might have figured out as for like this whole like this thing within like the bound. And that way while studying more further about strengthening studying, observing and studying more about that role that they might have really found out the truth that they create. That's for like why that role existing and like what the consequence of that found confirmation is so that certainly they might have used that information to eventually bring about like the destruction of like the wrong right by the research so that the faction might have gone to like the head and all of like might have okay straight away like manipulated like the innocent twinsies by telling them this like absolute like is the bounce like taking like a living human soul and basically that probably would be without necessarily level resulting in like a huge number of like forward like basically like rushing into that human world and like the that will be creating like huge trouble in that human world we organize like oh they are static so like and that's the for because might have probably manipulated like the symbols and turn the symbols against like the bounce might be what might have happened so like actually through like the sort of manipulation diagram, like frequently frequency price might have probably the leader of the frequency might have probably fallen for like that manipulation and like and might have certain that like it's like high priority to like take out like the bound price before it's too late. And like that way, like in a next to the fourth man of like everyone like the bound price sometimes might have been absolutely soft when like it was like sudden uncontrolled attack by like the twenty on like the bound price coordinated with like the manipulation so that might have been what might have happened with the middle creators. So that during that whole war between like the user and like the bound like and that the bound might have been early conscious that like why suddenly try to like the bound right and that what during that war like and like even interactions might have changed, dialogues might have changed during that war means like the bound right eventually during like the war like might have found out that this is about like the princess like for commonly misunderstanding like the bounds and basically contain that it needs the bounds are like they have are breaking their own rules and taking like souls and everything. And like that misunderstanding being the reason for like the princess war against like the bounds and real and like the bounds might have figured during like the process of like that war might be like that is that even so that leave the bounds that war might have done their demonstrate on their actual maximum by fighting off against like the princess right like the bound up might eventually done their absolute maximum by to try to that convince like the right that is they are not doing that but like there are all those items might have only failed because like the manipulation by like the photo might have had that sense of like an effect on like the period that like the digital right might have kept containing on that war against like the monk and that way like and that after like the war like it might have been just very few bound alone that might have remain and survive that war might be like the case and like since then like and like both remains are very strong like when might have lost like uh, all of like just uh, once in their life that that bound so definitely like the bound at that point might have can absolute experience in place and might have that absolute take depends on the basis. So definitely like at that point like and it might be that exactly to that like it might be only from that point on like there definitely was like memo right now in that uh with that Mayuri is that personal standard, given and like this thing, they move, even revealing that basically, that of they are saying that sharp increase, I think, like that other thing that like they're saying that sharp increase that like amount like taking like human soul after that thinking of like the war, like this might be that lead you to that maybe only from that point on, like the bounce might have actually there has been this to that events on like the Quincy's might have straight away decided to do that to to totally act against peace that now that like the bounce remaining bounce of it might have felt that they had lost it all that on that it one into the violence like the Quincy so like actually they might have decided to that basically those bound members who might be when I other values we like taking life so even though it's like the whole would be that granting them the superior powers that they might have started like the breaking of like their own and basically that totally seriously focused on like taking life from that point on to probably get stronger and surpass the strength of the and once again that raise another war against like the duties and the villain which might have been according to like the found leaders like digital like and the like nothing like the war between like Quincy and like the bound like and the bound leader might have along with like a few other bound might have still managed like survive and escape. So like after escaping like it might have been that might have been like the on of like getting that actual again from like the Quincy. And it might be a possible like the boundary and all of letting it like they might have started off chiefly focusing on that taking the light source and like sharply increasing and quickly increasing and this might have been what might have happened since then that we might have been for that eventual event of like the warning like that when they might have been in, even in like the beginning stages of like that preparations and like anything like but like more and more like due to them like taking like so like more and more like all of like might have like integrated to like the human world and that way like and on the sort of work taking like the whole thing like the uh might have even start to like taking even at that point of sense and that war itself like totally might have ended up with like the losing a great number of like the members of like the victory right and like the government created like the soldiers like that wiping out like the all that might have happened while like the founders might have been already in like the preparation process of that taking lives off and spending that might be like the case of me to the members. So that Jin as well as like some of it might feel that I some descendants of like might be a member of like that suffering found might be like that in the situation. So like maybe that Jin's plan might be not just to them to select to the mundo and basically by even like most likely taking that the source of like its own subordinate as well, like the bound subordinate as well as long as like should as well might be just like self domestic plan. But at least the table for next if they have a like eventual betrayal from like change probably plan if things from subordinate since like its own strong subordinate or like the cause of this time might definitely like accumulated a lot of like life force like considering that what into like into for heading or like to some of the uh, uh, like this leads to the country social stuff might be like lifestyle cycles might be like since plants definitely because like since won't be feeling as like taking any risk while going up to like to the model because like soon might be gonna put as to like to like great extent as to like that's the power of like so definitely like so that definitely change plan might be to that way to let you come about and that way because next Suki just trying this dancing would be only hoping that by dancing will be having this might be far greater than even like the narrative with the whole in that and that way pops into like to enforces like a whole of like uh the whole of and pop into that way create like an army of that whole of and then at that point from like chin to that the like army follow to that show to like the soul society and for next gen at that point to like get revenge on like the soul people might have definitely be might actually be like Jin's like ultimate goal. So Jin might be not planning on like basically just making it to like Silvermont and just staying there and like being there alone. But like even before doing all of that, like Jin might be having that with secret ultimate goal, which might be to like get revenge on like the soldiers by like talking that absolute fight of like the soldiers by the end. That them also having like Silvermont of like point like the so that we as well as like human world like need each other to like survive that basically since like the world of the human world as well as the society is like dependent it is individual existence is like dependent on each other like and like in that case, like in the case of like the world of like Mundo, like I'm thinking 20 years only different world, but this is not dependent, which can only exist without any dependency at all. So even if like the human world as well as like the society gets probably restored, like the still some amount of my still exists maybe like actual different friends like Jim definitely would be having that absolute secret God in his mind to that definitely after like going up to making it to like the amount of for like things to like create like an entire army that powerful follows and basically straight away go up to like society and like just about that take out like all the social system or like the entire different society because like by now definitely Jim will be absolutely well and fully aware that basically the attack by the Quincy's on the right onto like the bound right was due to like the manipulation of like the source because might be the cases that you want for internet like about which like Jim by now in like some YouTube channels they are aware of also like so like Jim might be only beneficially only might be that it's in for to get that absolute revenge from like the soldiers and from the might be like that to the situations that we might be against. Okay, so that definitely that is the question right now. Of that basically Jim's plan naturally might be to that also that to ensure to that feel away like it's not like the Quincy's does like life so and at that point like Jim might be not expecting for his like power levels to like sharply spike and him to get that six levels of power here which like Jim might easily straight away turn against that subordinates from subordinates including that might be you know straight away like attack them and basically steal away each and every one of the life force. Might be which would be creating an even further way higher like levels of like the power upgrade for like Jin. And with that for Jin to like straight away head out to like the open even during daytime and basically for like Jin to like straight away start start looking attack on without any skill like attack on that to take job like so which would be at that point it's definitely without any skill Jin will be planning on like launching that attack and so that like at that point Jin will be only expecting for like definitely powerful sword reapers from that it's a little sword reapers like finding out about that and like powerful sword reapers from like the society be straight away sent to like take out a single Jin at that point would be what like Jin would be expecting. So, like at that point, like still Jin would be totally from Jin's point of view, Jin would be totally by then like Jin will be having such extreme levels of like power of their like a position would be what Jin would be is that like usually even if like a captain from the side right he himself like so to like bring down Jin at that point like Jin is usually able to like offer and kill and that's all they can basically even take the source of like that sort of along with like any squad character in that might so at that point to like stop Jin might be able to like single-handedly take the call down if along the lines of that absolute or confident like Jin might be killing at like person and might be having the plan of just minutes so that like by then like and like the tunnel connected to Mongol would be lag ending up becoming like Jin that will taking all those like great number of powerful light source like the talented active from the pipeline would be ending up becoming so tools that definitely the way that process of like all of that happening at that point definitely to like become member. The one thing that Jane will be actually second time like Jane will be also having one other or conference that basically especially like even if like Jane attacks like humans and basically start to like steal light source without like any skill like even at that point like definitely there only an entire lab scale is having combat from maybe so enough to like the human world to like attack Jane due to like the presence of like humans in like the human world because if such a war happens like all those like humans would be all getting caught up in like the human world would also be getting caught up in that part. So like that as well, since like the human world as well as like the society in that balance, like we need that balance to like so definitely due to this about which as well tension might be when by now is definitely not right. So definitely Jin might definitely not be at all expecting that even if like Jin takes away the like stealth and starts attacking humans. Like even at that point, like large scale army of like so people who want to join the free like the human world, different Jin down along the lines of like that person or something that will Jin might be having. So sort of new American. So definitely that way like Jin's plan might be to like fight like so because as well as like attack humans and like slowly continuously keep on taking like so until like the without any skill from that point on taking like the talent to like achieve amount of that big enough that like when you be able to like easily go through that huge amount of and basically like take control and roll over like the great and followers in that huge amount of create like an army of followers and straight away head off to that the society. and basically lack straight away, lack launch, lack gyms, lack power of that as to which against lack result rating. And that way to like take out lack result represent for lack result rating. As well as that way lack and basically lack the destruction of lack human world as well happening around control society and lack at that point itself for before like the complete discussion of like about these things will be happening like according to like the gym's plan like and different gym might be also probably planning on like basically abducting using that for superior power that gym might would be hoping to like fortify and like gym might be also planning on like taking a great number of like humans on abducting a great number of humans from like the human world and probably taking the abducting and taking them to that to the model as well. It's definitely for the humanitarian. So definitely like so that like Jin will like maintain like immortality for like eternity as well. Jin will be definitely planning on that as well. Definitely make it so before deploying like the society as well as the human world like Jin might be also planning on like basically affecting and bringing a lot of humans to that country to be around and basically so that like that so that like Jin would be able to like maintain this like more friendly as well. Might be just like that by the rolling over like the whole of them will have like those humans as well. And like taking over might be definitely Jin's like ultimate plan. Definitely also make it clear. Also definitely I'm still getting reminded to mention that basically on top of like taking a nice role like basically for that sharply increasing that the strength of like about on top of that like that nice role this is the soul of like the Quincy as well. Then and those for like the sharp increase in like strength of that sound would be at that point that's the boundary begin at that point would be far too extreme might be like the actors of the so like about that. So and while the reimbursement right now that like it might have experience this like extreme sharp surfs in like strength by taking the life cell or the printing in like the long distance pass might be like calculated for producing but minimal friends and like and this might be also the reason for like whatever back when he was alive like we went specifically mentioning that we haven't tasted like he didn't know the taste of that Quincy soul that he whatever specifically mentioning saying that dialogue and while mentioning himself might be due to that that Furagawa for Jin already having done that and basically Furagawa most likely being a witness to that or even being aware of that. Already, it's definitely my think very okay, so like the flavor potential and CPI on this with that language. You might be totally right that is even that the person that definitely is work definitely not at all being strong enough. Like with which was like current person level for kind of like which go definitely won't be at all able to like defeat or foreign defeat. So might definitely be that the potential is definitely my preparation. But and so that this time I'm probably talking for to not be like the main protagonist that which go that is be defeating Jin but like I'm focusing equally that Nikki should have this like should have like cleansing powers like which I'm still taking remember to mention maybe naturally advantage against like the also like the which like I'm just trying to believe eventually like it should have in like the pressurized kind of like situation like gain back his like getting access back to his like 20 powers and I'm sort of I think that still taking remember to mention most likely that happening during a scenario where like Jin most likely eventually would be that maybe uh, that like about thing that take out like or he may and or he may being in like an extended in the situation and that that the remaining of like if it has like friends like or some like totally badly injured kind of like state and that not being able to like make it in time to be able to like save for him. So like as like Jin will be able to like take out or yeah that very last second is when I'm like such this instant integration is what I'm looking at you make it possible for like if you like to be able to like regain back access to like in the boss to like save for him is like the scenario that is being on the end. So from that way on, like an ultimate one versus one battle between like Jin versus like the 20 should have happening. In which like I'm like the in this like current arc like I'm so basically hitting like the point where like you should have the first like 20 powers would be defeating like the main villain Jin and not at all Ichigo. There's like the scenario that I'm going for and not the so like I definitely might be very interesting right now. Like in the case of like the powers of like soul people come to different like Bankai might not be that especially like Bankai having two stages like and like the second stage of that ultimate power like the second stage of Bankai might not be like the maximum limit of like the levels of like, strength and power that the soul might in actuality be able to like you know uh like the soul strength to might be that's the case for like the select few among like resources. Like I'm different, like it might be not the case for like the entire resources, but like I'm different, like I'm sure because like a select few minority and so because might be like chosen ones who might alone have like powers to like even go way further beyond like even stage two of like bank or of their bank accounts. Like I'm maybe they're existing like under the like multiple stages even beyond stage two of like bank account or like I'm like bank possibly being like only like the beginning and levels of like inactivity possibly only being like the beginning stages of like the full extent of like the power of like the soul about which like right now not even maybe like urology as well as like not even Urahara might be even aware of like the person might be like what was the case definitely not so like I'm something like exactly like bank I like but like in this will be the stronger than bank I like probably going for a select few chosen minority and so that being having like all sorts of like different powers as well which will be far greater and so be really stronger than bank I powers like and for like Ichigo in like Ichigo's starting 11 plus like for Ichigo to be able to like defeat Jin, that Ichigo might need that access to like powers beyond the even the second stage of that kind of powers, which might probably definitely it's deep within that Ichigo, but like about which like but like access to those streams to be of powers even are stronger than Bankai powers like I'm probably protecting might probably extend like yeah like Ichigo that would be extremely hard to get access to that those powers like go probably having to grow a lot more and mature a lot more as like a soldier, as well as like having to go through even more harsher and extreme training when in like the Ichigo for like Ichigo to even be able to like get access to that extreme power of Ichigo, which might be protect Ichigo might be like the accuracy and the situation in the preparation. Like Ichigo having that whole transform power of like Ichigo like that half soldering of half hollow power of Ichigo like to combine that power so like hollow power contains within like that hollow side of like Ichigo well the like extreme powers as well that this might all be what might actually be required or like a great extent of these powers which might lie within that Ichigo might be what actually Ichigo might need to access for Ichigo at present to even be able to like or indicate and definitely I'm also trying that Ichigo at present definitely not being able to at all be able to like access all those powers that is there at present is definitely not present and hence and considering like Ichigo definitely this time not at all being able to like defeat like the main dimension but instead it will be like Ishida due to like Ishida's like I think they call most likely cancer winning advantage to against like the powers of like the bounce most likely might be the case that and due to which way Ishida usually being like the one to like ended up ending up like for an ending just like the scenario that is sitting on the game. Okay, so like the minimum range right now that is either if that turn into like to kind of is like big enough that even at that point for like the safe journey of like Jin from like the human world to like the human world. Not for that to be possible like the for example, there might be like spiritual like to required for that to be possible. And so that this like the quick prompt that like Jin wants to like fix and like Jin mentioned, like Scott mentioned that this clock might be not just an ordinary clock, but like it might be one of like that might be that like maybe that might be that single spiritual device that which might be required for like the safe journey and passing from like the human world to like the human world because like according to the emission like satellites out like the house like right is to and fro at least travel from like in world to like circulating to like space okay like the passage way that like I think like had created like being I think like an unstable one and like basically having that serious possibility of like basically possible that Ichigo and those like wipe out if they don't make it in time like basically something that has to respect for that possibility like I'm saying like similarly there might be maybe even more of a great respect in like the passageway from like the human world to like the model. So like to lesson of that of that of even that the powerful chain to not get wiped out while attempting that passageway attempting that travel between like human world to like the model. This like clock it might be a special device that it's like proper functioning might be absolutely necessary might be like that with different situations of minimum information. So like definitely it might be a situation where like chain might actually have to take this like different device of that across along with that chain while if like Jim want to like take cross directing your directors might be like this the okay, so like that's the one that I'm mentioning right now is that basically until like there's no meeting chain like there's no like always follow like ensure to like follows the rules of like the sounds and basically might have never attacked a living human at all. It might have been solely after like meeting chain and through like that actual brainwashing and manipulation of chain that can basically like literally using of might have gone to the extent of like attacking a living human. Might be what might have actually happened is definitely not 300. So definitely and like this might be all consciously according to that Chin's plan to definitely to have this like bound subordinates that even Yoshino said that definitely while Chin would be having absolutely no love things of affection towards like Yoshino that Jin might have always seen Yoshino as like uh, has like someone that like Jin can totally take eventually take advantage of while along with all the other subordinates of like Jin. Jin might have always seen that version as just another subordinate while focusing on that fake act as like it's totally in love with like it might be like that beautiful situation and like all the subordinates of Jin might be definitely Jin might be viewing that as like individuals to like eventually once like eventually Jin will be getting in that is that once like Jin will be getting close to like a Jin's like goal of like maybe to like before more like right before that something to that generally things that coordinates of like this just to take advantage of that right before Jin that executes that role gives that role. It's definitely might be the case, definitely not different. So like Jin might have Jin from like the past while growing up while finding that like subordinate like one by one that basically finding other bounds and making them just like subordinate one by one like I'm sure that it might be at that point like it might have been like because like that person war between like the pound as well as like the Quincy's that in that war like I'm talking like the minority of like the bombs that might have survived and it might have all got scattered as well using like the war as well even while they might have survived like the minority of like bombs might have survived they might have got thoroughly split up and scattered like the prize might have got thoroughly got split up and scattered might have been like what might have also happened back then is also the cleaner so yeah and I'm just wondering that uh, since like Yoshino has like revealed that accounts are like mutated, or like only Yoshino might have like living uh might have only been present in that war as well. Might be the case definitely possibly that I'm very sorry. So definitely after that war, like once that they might have all got split up like I'm and at that point, I'm considering that in that December Civil War, Jin might have had to like wait and escape. Like Jin might have had that absolute feeling of that grudge and wanting to like get revenge on like certain things, and might have been the courage to like find out things it was that has manipulated the vintage. So that way, like without like creating at all, like Jin might have figured out that it was like the whole thing of and that definitely that Jin might have also be set up at that point that like ultimate goal to like not only get revenge on like the vintage, but also eventually to get like absolute revenge on like the whole and to study in about it. So represented everything. So that kind of worrying like definitely it might have been maybe Jim himself that might have been the reason for like after that war, like basically like the found like the being that absolute revealing that absolute increase in like found that sudden that sharp increase in that found like taking like nice souls and everything. So that might have been not going to like since all of the since have been going to like have that the remaining found members like basically to find an each and every single one of like the remaining bound members from like the five that might have gotten split due to like of that one and to like gather that up and like form Jin's like new tribe and basically to have them all like basically take more and more life source and basically to grow strong up together because like after that war like the strong tribe might have been produced to like such small number so like Jin back then might have definitely needed like it has one affordable find like the remaining about right members and basically to form a group with them so that like they could like survive until like while still with that while continuing on that like taking away like life souls and getting it all strong up together so that like eventually definitely Jen might have also been selfish so that like eventually that in like 20 centuries or like Jen might have set up that goal to like meet protective and also like might be for Jen being able to like make it to that goal like for Jen to like hopefully eventually betray make that betrayal thing into some subordinates and basically to that way steal away all those life souls that subordinates have accumulated so far from the life of standing on great number of years. Like this is that by stealing and taking away all the lives of his own subordinates like this. Still would be having an idea as to like how it's the new strong of like Jin will be getting with their like Jin might have planned from way back, certainly by the so definitely sad way that Jin might have even from a way long distance past that might have set up as like absolute ultimate goal to like only get this like revenge on like the Quincy's as well as like the Soul Breakers. But like I'm referring to like the Soul Breakers like eliminating like taking out like the Quincy's like that might have okay came in as a like a shock to it. That Jin might have been the case, but you know, so like and Jin might have maybe even been like realistic. Jin might have even been frustrated for like Jin himself like I don't know, like boundary not being able to like get that preventing like the Quincy's due to lack of some sort of like sort of fighting with Quincy's. So like Jin might have been even enraged, even more enraged and like the solar different that lead might have still decided to like keep continuing on with like plan to like have like subordinate, you know, himself and like subordinate like uh, take him off living so and get it strong together. Then that way for like eventually finally Jin to like make that the fan on that subordinate then make it to like take him go roll over like the whole of and basically create the form of harmony and that get that aspect dimension on like the soul trading or the soul trading might be like something that Jin might have planned even from down the spin past might be like actually different to the human section. So that definitely like Yoshino like even attacking a living human like was not having attacked a living human like really that all might have been according to like the manipulation, thorough manipulation by Jin on like Jin might like the case definitely might have arranged. So the cleaner mentioned right now that basically things like in the case of like the downright like new sound up now sound like totally cutting so like after like the warp between like the bound tribe and like the things like and that might have scar Jin of that absolute scar of like fear within like Jin's mind might have been like the case of the Playground Pro. So like, even to like the person like that, the situation might be like things like the threat plus when and everything like that. So the situation like the root of it might be come down to that absolute fear that change might be have might which might have been formed within since like that distant past walk between like the vibe of like the countries and like the north might be like the situation of the Playground Trail. Because like since then I'm like change what change might have felt is that like since like new forms are now born like basically as long as like the human world where like the twenties as well as like the society where like the soul are like as long as like these two worlds exist like basically like the possibility of like basically like the bounds like Jin eventually getting like the bounds eventually getting fully wiped out finally with like Jin as well getting wiped out like that possibly might be something that Jin might have still seen as like seriously high uh probability of like opportunity and like that might have been that absolute fear for Jin. And like Jin since then might have decided and fixed in his mind to like totally to like bypass such an individual future fate like so like Jin at that point might have felt that basically it was solved because of like this whole of which was person between like the bound in like the bound right that had resulted in like the bound right ending up with such a fate might be along the lines that Jin might have in an enraged and frustrated man might have felt after like the war against like the tribe of Quincy's by the bound might be like a human so like Jin at that point said like after the war like might have decided to like break go against break that role and basically to focus only on like taking life out. And that will the plan might have been for like him to like as soon as possible to like grow his strength and as soon as possible. And so that like eventually Jin might have at that point felt like until like out of Jin's fear, like will definitely always exist and like to always be immortal and to always uh exist like and not get wiped out. Like what Jin might have planned might have been to like definitely like for Jin to be safe, like definitely like Jin will definitely have to like just wipe out and destroy like the entirety of like the human world as well as like the society since like Jin might have figured that basically the society like as well as like the human world are like dependent on each other. So definitely the lack of the balance between these two worlds end up with like these two worlds getting wiped out. So the one thing that Jin might have figured even from like the downstream past the limited like Jin might have decided that like for Jin to be safe from like the Quincy's as well as like the society was like uh Jin would have to like to ensure that Jin would have to like destroy both the society for the World Cup and how to like the destruction and watch. And right before that complete destruction, uh, right before both like like the human world will be getting that fully wiped out, like for him to like make it to huge amount of, and at that point for him to be like even to achieve that level of strength that will be far surpassing that of like the entirety of like the whole of the like huge amount of, so that like at that point Jin was as long as like him as is able to like surpass like the powers of like the whole of the like huge amount of, then Jin will be able to like always like access and like James would actually be able to like maintain that immortality and like would be able to like ensure that like he would remain alive for like eternity, for all eternity will be along the lines like and like James might have totally planned and created this like plan and told out of that absolute fear setting James of like a wipeout is definitely of that himself is definitely what might have happened is definitely by literally so like definitely the data map condition that Supermon definitely won't be at all dependent on neither like the society existence or like the existence of like the world of like human voice might be like that situations that may not so definitely Jin might have also back then itself like might have also planned to like totally to like have that like before heading off to like to Komodo to like have that and bring a whole a great number of black humans as well to affect a great number of humans as well and bring them to hopefully bring them to black people as well. So like to at that point force him to like roll over like the horrors as well as like humans and that we like force him to like be able to like absolutely ensure that reflect immortality for all eternity through such a manner by living in like Supermodel might be like what matters that as like that ultimate goal like might have totally set in his mind out of and all that stemming from that absolute fear of like getting wiped out for like which might have existed at the time. Jin for such a long time like basically something to like games like the survivors as well as like the disease. Might have been like the actual different struggling and so hopefully that was bringing was for like from Kurahara as well as like your perspective as well and like they might have some secret topic between each other and that the maybe that for the field of like right now Ichigo even training with like Kurahara even having Ichigo train with like Ganju as well as the Renji of all people instead of like Kurahara as well as that Yorozu training Ichigo at present like might be Tuesday maybe Tuesday that maybe that at present in like the present situation that maybe like after like gaining like all this like information about like the bounce like what Kurahara as well as that Yorozu might have actually figured and came down to like the conversation of might have been that basically in against like Jin, against like a villain like Jin, that definitely Ichigo definitely had because that person strength definitely won't be able to like defeat Jin. Might be like the conclusion that they might have came down to. But like while Ichigo won't be able to like, defeat Jin, that definitely Ishida is like their key. That Ishida would will in fact definitely be able to like defeat and break down Jin if like they are able to like have if once like they will be able to like have like Ishida heal up and regain back and definitely like both definitely right now that both Yoroji as well as like Urahara might be giving for their highest priority to like Ishida and not Ichigo. The main protagonist Ichigo might be like that to just situation definitely not very so this might be the reason for like neither Urahara nor Yoroji like from their perspective they will be feeling as if like pointless to like waste their time and at the present situation trying to like train Ichigo, but instead like it would be totally worthwhile if they like putting all their efforts into like trying to like train Ishida to have like Ishida not only get access to like Ishida like a lost principle, but also to like sharpen up and strengthen up Ishida's like Quincy powers or Quincy powers like even for the two further greater levels and both Guaranteed as well as like Urahara will be seeing that as like their best chance in like the present situation to be able to like bring down a villain like Jin and it as like Ishida as like their best bet in them being able to like bring down Jin might be along the lines like Urahara as well as like Yoroji at certain it might be like strongly feeling this definitely matters the range so like definitely this might be the reason for like Urahara as well as like Yoroji's like absence in like Ichigo's like present training because like they might totally have absolutely no purpose of like physical being a connected kitchen. So like both Urahara as well as like Yoroti might be patiently waiting for like you should have to like heal up. And at that point, I'm definitely putting like both. It was just Urahara alone, but like I'm leaning more towards about the game like maybe along with like Urahara, like you already have well together like train. You should have. Like without like each one of those like finding realizing about it is like the scenario that I'm just only going and and then eventually I'm totally like it's about only finding out about that and at that point I'm just like it's about only being extremely jealous and frustrated due to that we should have getting all that superior spotlight, greater spotlight than that Ichigo at that point. It's like also like an individual puzzle scenario that I'm looking for today. So that basically we showed like a member thing that even while right now both O'Hara as well as like Yoriki might be seeing like Shida as like their best chance of like being able to like defeat Jin like when to that Asian case like and still very same O'Hara when like Yoriki might be seeing no we should have but like Ichigo as their best bet of like being able to like as that single person that will be able to like or for trying to defeat Asian in the battle solely due to lactation not being about especially when brain. Also the premission right now is definitely for like yeah the government state delay to like go to like the brain area and for the brain for it to be like yeah that will be this time that will be like training which is like the scenario that so like even with like Ganjo John like I'm like the government state delay like Renji as well as for like the PD this like scenario that so like either Renji leading or like yeah government state delay showing up and basically telling uh, like Ranges to like get like the sidelines and basically I'm looking at that point like it would be a serious yeah okay like training is at that point is like the scenario that I'm things because like I'm sort of maybe like Rukia by now maybe that's also like a person that I'm thinking Rukia by now possibly having all of that like the secret conversation between like Yoroti as well as like O'Hara and yeah maybe having figured that basically that like the reason for like Yoroti as well as like O'Hara not even bothering to like train to go even in the present situation due to like them placing all their faith in like Kushida being able to like bring down things. So like definitely I'm going to bring that Rukia definitely would be totally might be absolutely proud of like choosing was like having strength and like it was journey and it was still and it's in like strength as well as in character and like it was yeah when picked up having that absolutely feeling of attraction towards like physical will also taking so much pride in like which was like achievements of and growth and strength and everything and like all the even while all the odds like would be stacked up against like Ichigo being able to like suppress all that odds and like basically Ichigo being able to pull through that eventually that basically or in all that achievements of Ichigo that they might be taking such absolute pride might be like that to the feeling so that definitely here as well in that situation of like the front of like Jin as well. I'm definitely something that Rukia definitely wanting even while fundamental function or as well as like you are manipulating all of their faith in like instead of being able to like bring down Jin like Rukia personally wanting that instead of like Ishida wanting that Ichigo to be able to like that to be like the one to be this time as well to be like the one to pull through and like bring down Jin like definitely that being of like of such an absolute important for like for that to happen and that to be of like such an absolute that deserve like being presented in like Rukia and that to be of like absolute important for like Rukia to ensure that like to for it to eventually end up being like Ichigo himself that like this time as well like overcoming like the odds and the like to be like the one to like bring down Jin so like due to that just that priority is my top basis that within that yeah definitely remember that yeah and the top grade like showing up to like the training area and then with like a single like yeah like training which go is like the scenario that I'm and then with like one like which will be revealing that to like which go that like okay is going to like training so at that point I'm like it was straight away not taking which seriously at all and like I'm looking like okay, physical straight away, like making fun of like, sort of, yeah, at one like at that point of like with an app that I'm doing, right? So like that way, you go straight away, like underestimating, yeah. But like I'm looking at that point, like a serious, yeah, like probably unleashing out like all sorts of like unique powers of like, so, yeah, just like the scenario that I'm doing. And definitely I'm looking by now, like, yeah, might be like the focus of like restoring back, like just one might be like the case, like of development, and like by now. Rukia might have regained back a lot of like Rukia's strength. Though nowhere near fully, that's still Rukia by now might have regained back a lot of her strength. which like okay, that information like okay might have kept hidden from like other sources, including Ichigo as well, might be like that to the so like once like okay, we are meeting out that power like uh hidden immense power within like okay, at that point I was looking like for like Ichigo totally being short, and that not only that but like there might be also having that absolute precision in like the way like yeah would be approaching a fight when it's definitely also mentioned again. So like definitely and Rukia would be having her own extremely unique way of like approaching a fight, and like definitely by now since like Rukia knows like Ichigo fast and well like the way like Ichigo of course fight as well as like the mindset of Ichigo and all because like since like after spending so much time with like Ichigo like Rukia might be totally knowing like Ichigo fast and well and like totally Ichigo using all of that information totally against like Ichigo. So like seriously put Ichigo in to put pressure on Ichigo and seriously put Ichigo into that, and it's kind of like a situation. It's like in that battle between that training battle between like Rukia and Ichigo is like the scenario that in the scenario that I mean and to which like I'm Ichigo at that point would be absolutely shocked and thrown away by that absolute skills and like battling style of that Rukia and also for Rukia at that point it's like in the scenario that I'm and my victory. Also the plane and the preemption right now is that Kushida might be focused assuming that like we could have like the soul surviving Quincy. When in actuality I'm thinking that there might be a single one more Quincy that might be still alive. But for them, there might be one more Quincy somewhere in that the human world about which that neither Kushida nor like any of that Kushida's friends like none of them might be even aware. Might be that the actual like the situation could live in and I'm just that single Quincy could be like a woman and I'm just trying that definitely should I end up as like shockingly finding out about this only in like the years of is like in the scenario that I've seen. And that way I'm seeing that girl or that woman Quincy eventually ending up being joining and being part of like his first like yeah like the in the scenario and fighting alongside them in like the episodes. Also like in the future the temperature scenario that I'm about to like I'm okay, so like definitely not the potential right now. It's definitely for like you know how I feel that definitely not go after like you're saying because like the scenario that I'm going to break. Instead like Urahara will be staying there exactly and like Urahara stop and like will be patiently waiting for like Ishida to wake up and definitely the waking up and like basically like if I'm not seeing like if you know so I would just straight away like running out from like Urahara stop and has like Shida will be able to run away from for her stop. At that point is when I'm looking like for her stopping issue, like for scenario that I'm looking like. And at that point is when I'm looking like for her telling it to the other me if you should have both of like you know the way it should have essence like basically it should have not only not going to be able to like save you know but at the same time like it should have will be like like would be putting himself as well as at risk as well as basically exactly repeat of the previous scenario will be happening with like friends coming up and that would be once again ending up becoming a burden to all would be along the lines of like for Hara in a cold manner will be telling to Ishida which would be what like I'm looking like would be stopping Ishida in this track that he would be like okay attempting to like ignore and go after like to save users like scenario there. So like those four words of like Hara stopping Itira and like Hara at that point would be like taking Itira to this like different training room location in that within that Hara shop and then Hara would be doing that actual training to like Itira which would be without like regular would be kind of like making Ishida be able to like attack Ishida's like lost principles like the scenario that I'm doing right now. And then like I'm looking at that point would be like deciding to like straight away go after like Yoshino to like save Yoshino. But like as like Ishida would be about to leave from like training area like at that point like Kurahara would be totally like giving that reality check to like Ishida and basically at present, like even like Ichigo, the person who had basically like situated by like basically not even Ichigo's like person level of strength is nowhere near strong enough to like defeat the Jin would be along the lines of like that absolute reality set that like Kurahara would be giving to Ishida at that point. This is like the scenario that so like what makes Ishida think that is just by getting that to be access back to like it should have like 20 powers and like it should have would be able to like straight away go out there and basically break down Jin would be along with the lines of the different definitely questioning that question is like the scenario that so definitely that will be once again stop it and like then for I would be giving that absolute serious training to Kishida to give that training and to like seriously that for that sharp fight in that Kishida like 20 to like to do that like Kurahara might have been patiently waiting for that time. So definitely that way like that training started and basically that Kurahara even telling us that basically that to like save that and that training I'm looking to be like a seriously difficult training even for like if you like even for like the sharp should I like that training that Kurahara would be giving. So he said I would be like an extremely difficult training like person after that which is always is struggling with like succeeding in that training and like at that point that Kurahara will be talking reminding Kushida about like basically how like that about like the situation of that nation and basically that should have gone to like save you then like that has to like succeed in this training like that doesn't have that much any time at all to like spare on like or like waste away that like should has to like succeed in like this training as soon as possible like should want to be able to like save you with the other like Kurahara to be like reminding the struggling people as well, just like the scenario that like I'm giving that push to like that to be able to be able to be making it be able to like succeed in that training and gain that absolute in that point and power that in that power like scenario that so like why all this will be happening like and like in the case of Yoshino and the like scenario to be Yoshino making it towards like the location of that would be able to like Yoshino and like being able to like sense like gems like from uh, or sometimes like from even from that series. So like that way like I Yoshino that basically tracking down so that are still like tracking down Jin and like Yoshino attempting for that ambushed attack to like take out Jin and that is like thoroughly fading with like things like superior heightened strength and powers by now. Will be able to like sense like the incoming person. It's like the or like exactly like even if the mansion was destroyed like Jin even reading that like will recognizing that alien has it. So like Jin might be totally expecting that that at any moment like up even after like leaving that escaping from Jin's mansion like definitely at any moment like basically an attack from like there's no only one thing that Jin would be totally obviously easily be able to like see uh, coming and happening like the scenario that it that way like that ambush attack of like an attempt by those to like take out Jin like suddenly failing to like the scenario that happening and definitely able to like to make things easier for Jin like and like Jin even like so by the time would be like Jin would be ensuring to like say at like an isolated like kind of like place with like not having that as like subordinates that they still be in like the same role as that as that Jin might be stepping through. So like I'm doing like Jin probably like staying at like a new hideout kind of like a location where like to be like a huge room where like Jin will be staying all by himself. And with like having his like subordinates stay at like the rooms a bit further away from like the room it's like going to make so like steadily showing up to that location to that room and like will be steadily as like would be launching that ambush attack to like take out Jim. Like I'm like in that attack like I don't think to like give it all within all like strength and that way to enough sacrifice can like a man like to take out Jim like I don't think but like I'm looking like even before like to like execute that Jim probably would be being able to like spot using that way like ending up being put into like an kind of a situation like this I don't know so like since then, like I'm going to be extremely frustrated and disappointed and like the that probably so that the best to like expose like gems like villains and like will the hidden vision and basically like and repeatedly the like while being in like kind of state will be shouting out against like Jin until like and Jin will be thoroughly ignoring until eventually things ending up in that reaching with like repeatedly like saying this and blaming Jin and like eventually reaching in like Jin reaching that tipping point where like Jin would be deciding like straight away that take away like the life all the souls contained within like from Jin to like take steal away all that life soul within like using and together like using Jin probably finally deciding that Jin finally getting angry at that point is like looking after that so like as like Jin would be about to like steal away all the source uh that version of Paruna like as Jin would be about to do that and that very last second is when I'm like Ishida along with like Ichigo and through like basically showing up, making that in try to do that location like the scenario that so like as like the scenario that I'm for like has like Jin will be about to take away the life soul of that like and attack like stopping Jin easily stopping Jin that attempt of Jin like the scenario that in Jin body being shot by the intensity of that attack. And like at that point like Jin probably saying that should along with like Ichigo and Pro at that point like boldly marching in towards that location that is like the scenario that I'm looking for. And like from that point on, I'm looking for like that ultimate showdown that against like Jim and like the wrong of Black Panther. That's like the big scenario that I'm looking for. In which like I'm okay putting like initially maybe got to be like Chibo that would be fighting off against like Jim. And I'm looking like in that fight like determined even though Chibo would be fighting off against like Jim in that determined manner like still I'm looking like while Chishida would be fighting off against like the other bounds who would be at that point like most likely taking players, a off stage. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at, right? So like Shida would be having that for even though Shida will be gaining by then would have unlocked a lot of like Shida powers and will be having for that will be great extent of like 20 powers like still like I'm putting due to this whole stage like situation like I'm putting like Shida like falling out of that bound who would have taken a off stage. So like that way so like during this time when I'm looking like the fight between like Ichigo and Jin would be going on. It's like the scenario that I'm doing, which like definitely like even with that determination like Ichigo still eventually ending up getting thoroughly for and which is like Jin it's like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like by then like I'm looking like Ichigo finally succeeding in like freeing and saving that illusion one first case like situation and taking out that bound as well. And I'm wondering maybe he should have single-handedly fighting out against like multiple bounds at the same time. It's like the and taking out multiple bounds. It's like I feel like about that. So like eventually that in that fight between like a determined Ichigo and Jin, like I'm the one that Jin only once again feeling getting that feeling of like they began realizing that like honestly Ichigo's like an acceptance from so like definitely eventually like once like Jin will be beating Ichigo like Jin will be able to like steal away like the life soul of like Ichigo. But like at that very last second I'm once again like Ishida probably stopping Jin, and it would be at that point that I'm referring like Ichigo by then would be so badly defeated and injured, and so like at that point like Ichigo being in this like sideline kind of like a situation while it will be Ishida that would be that having that ultimate final battle against like Jin, and like that final battle between like Ishida and Jin, like beginning from that point on, it was like from the scenario that I'm looking for.